Welcome everyone to another video of Vinyl Addict, and I have a stoner prog space psych pick number 17, and I'm talking about Porcupine Trees in Absentia. Now before I get into this, please don't forget to hit the like button, comment on this video, share this video, and if you still haven't, please subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell for updates. Okay, so with that out of the way, I haven't done a stoner psych space prog pick in a while. This is number 17. And when going through trying to pick an album that kind of represents, all these different elements, this band came to mind. And for one thing, they have from their earlier albums, this is their seventh album that was released in 2002, and they've gone through so many changes, just like typical English bands. They go, do a 180 from one album to the next. And by the time they got to this album, they were kind of going into prog and metal. However, it's not full blown on metal. There's some elements of metal, and I'm gonna get to that. And because one thing about this band is that they, like I said, they have gone through different stages in their life, from experimental. Steven Wilson is this is just one of his projects, and this band did end. And the one thing about it is that, yes, they'll go from experimental psych to even alternative rock, kind of poppy kind of songs, and a Pink Floyd kind of thing. That would be 1995's The Sky Moves Sideways, and that was the album that turned me on to this group. And this band was called the greatest band you never heard, and that was the first album I heard from them. And it reminded me of a kind of Wish You Were Here type of album, where the first track was like 18 minutes, and it had all these different parts to it, and then you had a few songs in between. Then they had the same song title, the Sky Moves Sideways Phase 2. The first one was Phase 1, and kind of bookended the album, and it reminded me of Pink Floyd. Now, when I think of this band, I think of, if I had to reference three bands that kind of remind me of Porcupine Tree, I guess it would be Pink Floyd, Tool, and Radiohead. And this album, bringing in the metal and a new drummer at the time, Gavin Harrison, yes, it did take it to a different level. And one thing, and there's the concept of this album, there's some dark themes regarding child molestation, child abuse, serial killers. I guess it would just be like different forms of death, whether it's the death of innocence, the death of music, the philosophy behind it. And so some pretty heavy stuff, and this does sound well on vinyl. This is 180 gram, and it's a gatefold. And the thing about this album, just like a Pink Floyd album, like a concept album, and about Porcupine Tree, is that they do make records which you have to play from beginning to end. It's just very cathartic. It's a very kind of cinematic as well. And by the time you get to the end of this album, I mean, the song sounds like an end of credits type of song. But like I said, they're going through all these kinds of different themes and different kind of emotions and different kinds of genres. Now they will still have all those elements of psych, experimental, alternative, and metal being the new element in this album. And the albums that follow this album in Absentia will be a bit more hard rock as well. But just to let you know that if you were introducing somebody to this album, like, hey, you want to hear a metal album, um, listen to this album. I wouldn't say it's a metal album because, like I said, they only put metal. Steven kind of arranges it where metal is needed, or to because the flow of this album has, like I said, all the previous elements that make Porcupine Tree, but they're just adding this new kind of heaviness to it. And so I wouldn't say, if I was to say how much metal from 0 to 100% is in the album, I would say just like 40% or 35%. It's not a metal album, but there's some metal elements. Like, because if you're starting off with The Blackest Eyes, which is the first track, yes, I mean, it's just coming guns blazing, freaking metal, heavy riffs, cool drumming, and then it just kind of stops. It goes through a back and forth of just kind of like that alternative kind of acoustic kind of singing, and then it just hits back to metal, like 2 or 3 times throughout the song. And so it's already telling you that this is not just a metal album. And if you were just a Porcupine Tree getting the new album, you would uh, immediately adapt to that, like, okay, because that's what they do. However, if you're not, yes, you would think like, okay, that the the first track is just starting off with these great metal riffs, and the abrasive drumming and the fast drumming and the kick-ass fucking prog metal, that's coming in full force. But then it doesn't stay that way, because then you go to Trains and it gets more introspective. It's you know Steven Wilson talking about his childhood, spending summers at his cousin's house, and everything, and sort of just kind of just looking back at his innocence, and so the death of innocence, pretty much. And then Lips of Ashes. That, I don't know. I'm thinking like that is just some weird um, topic. I don't know. I'm picking up like necrophiliac kind of stuff in there, what he's saying. I don't know. I could be wrong on that, and that's just my sickness. I don't know. But the next record is The Sound of Music, and he's talking about, just these corporate labels are just destroying music, and it's not even entertainment, it's just music to rot your mind and your soul. And that's a really cool song. Which brings us to Gravity Eyelids, and I think that is the one where some of these songs talk about a serial killer, and but however, it's just, I think at the second half of that song, I believe, is the one where it has like some heaviness to it again. And then there's Wedding Nails, which is that's an instrumental piece. It's much in the vein of, say, like Rush instrumental, like not really much like YYZ kind of, but from Moving Pictures, but more like Monkey Business from like Snakes and Arrows, if you listen to that kind of stuff. And oddly enough, Alex Lifeson of Rush would be a guest in one of their albums following this. He plays guitar in the Fear of a Blank Planet or whatever, right? And so they're kind of staring that way, and so that song is kind of reminiscent of that, really great riffs, and coming to Prodigal, which is the start of side 3, that is sort of like, the poppiness again, but it is, to me, a very Pink Floyd kind of comfortably numb slash learning to fly kind of feel to it, but it's them kind of doing it. And, there was different takes on Steven Wilson, whether he loved Pink Floyd or he hated Pink Floyd. Some say he couldn't stand them, but, I've read in other sources that, he loved Pink Floyd for that he sings about human elements that will always be timeless, which Roger Waters writes about. And he kind of has some Roger Waters as far as vocalizing or kind of um, the way he arranges his songs and his lyrics, and they kind of have like, well, especially the Sky Moves Sideways album, and that song Phase One, it reminded me of, when I first heard that, kind of reminded me of Roger Waters. So moving on from that, so that was it goes to number three. There's a song called Number Three, and that is about like genocide. So I don't know if he's talking about pretty much the Holocaust as far as Nazi Germany with the Jews. But however, it's just it's all encompassing. It just the idea of it. I don't think it's per se that particular genocide. There's been genocides all over the world in history and whatnot. So the creator has a master tape. Yeah, that's one of those other songs about these sickos, and it's sort of just like a reoccurring theme, and it's I don't know, this album has that kind of weird feel to it than opposed to the other ones. Like I said, there are darker themes in this album, and so um, even though the experimental kind of ambient sounds between the songs or whatnot, it all kind of bridges it together. And Heart Attack in a Lay-By, that is a really cool song. It's like the last moments of a guy having a heart attack in his truck or his car, and he's just talking about in detail what he's doing, and that's the person that he loves is gonna just be waiting. She's just gonna be waiting, and he's just gonna be not make it that night. It's just a kind of interesting kind of song, Strip the Soul. Um, and that is a really another great kind of heavy song, very crunchy kind of song. Well, midway through, and then Collapse the Light into Earth, which is the last song, and that's the one. It starts off with just like this kind of dissonant kind of piano kind of piece, very kind of a simple pattern, but just kind of stays throughout the whole song while he just keeps on layering kinds of different orchestral instruments, and it just hits a crescendo, and then it just ends with the piano again, and he doesn't resolve it. He just kind of leaves it there. And like I said, by this point, it sounds like the end of a film, and this is the kind of song that's being played at the end of the credits. And it's like you've seen like this weird kind of horror film. And if you were to like buy a DVD of a horror film in the chapters, or a Blu-ray, and then you just see like it would be these song titles, because they do sound cinematic, and that's one thing I could say about this album. And I felt like this one out of their whole catalog is probably their best to me. And this is the album where they played like most of the songs off this album on their last tour. So I think they themselves kind of really love this album. And so by doing, the last shows, they were this album had the most songs that they were performing, and I could see why. And so, and the thing is, it sounds great on, like I said, on vinyl. And so the lyrics are included on here, and the pictures on the label are just like faces that are scratched out. So it could be like a couple here, and they're just scratched out like it's pretty kind of I wouldn't say morbid, but it's kind of like thought provoking for sure, and it's just like, yeah, just more of the same. But yeah, this album is my favorite, and so it is my pick for, a stoner psych space prog pick number 17 in Absentia by Porcupine Tree. So I would suggest you, if you've never heard this band, like I said, it's the greatest band no one's heard, and they have a quite an extensive catalog of albums. Um, but this is the one. This is the game changer for them, and I would say like 1995's album, "The Sky Moves Sideways." That's another good one. And the other one I was mentioning with Alex Lifeson is cool. "Fear of a Blank Planet." But I'd start off with this one. And with that, I'll shut up. Leave me a comment below, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.